Okay, welcome to this Monday Night Live where we're going to be talking about 5 marriage myths and the emotional harm they cause. 5 marriage myths and the emotional harm they cause. And so, if this is the first time we are connecting, I am Dr. Yoandi. I am a medical doctor. I am a therapist based in the Greater Toronto area. Hi, Dr. Neka. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Now would be a very good time to share this live because we're launching our series on loving well, being well in love, loving well, what the things that we can do to love well and be well in love. And specifically, we're going to be talking today about marriage myths, 5 marriage myths and the emotional harm they cause. And so if you know anyone who is married, if you know anyone who is planning to be married, if you know anyone who is constantly complaining about marriage or their fears, or if they are worried about what marriage might look like for them, or if they're currently struggling in their marriage, now would be a good time to share while we get started. And so thank you everyone who is joining live. And if you're watching the replay, thanks for watching the replay. And so, like I said, we are going to be talking about 5 marriage myths. We're going to be debunking 5 marriage myths because, like I mentioned, I'm a psychotherapist and I see primarily women, and 95% of the women who come to see me at some point during their therapy sessions, we are talking about their marriages. We're talking about the struggles that they're having in their marriages. We're talking about challenges that they are experiencing, whether it is a disconnect with their spouse, whether it is ongoing conflict, whether it cycles around the same patterns of challenges that they're facing over and over again. Hi, Detsum. Hi, Marina. And so they're talking to me about whether it's financial challenges with parenting, whether it is just a general sense of dissatisfaction with their marriage. And so we're spending a lot of time talking about these things. I want to just clarify that I'm not a couples counselor, so I don't see the couple together. I see women, at least for now, it might change in the future. But I see mostly women, and many times as we're talking about the challenges that they're having with their marriages and we're talking through them, we're able to at least get to a point of resolution, even if it's not the two members of the marriage that are there in session. And of course, as usual, anytime I see a pattern in my practice, in fact, this particular topic has been highly requested, whether it comes to relationships, marriages, from a professional point of view. So yes, many people will speak to whether it's their pastor or so a leader in their community about their marriages, a mentor, but people are asking for this information from a professional point of view. And so that's what I'm offering today. And so I just want to say that the things that I'm talking about today, yes, I've been married for 10 years and my husband is actually here on the live. Thank you for joining. Yes, I've been married for 10 years. I also have parents who have been married for 40 years. And coincidentally, I'm just coming from my parents. And like I said, they've been married for 40 years. So in addition to my experience, and experience from watching them, I'm primarily going to be drawing from evidence-based research on married couples. And so what that means is that studies that have actually been done where there has been questionnaires, interviews, observations over very long periods of time to actually see and come to conclusions, scientific evidence-based conclusions as to what it takes to make marriages work. And so I'm not just going to be talking based on my opinion. I'm not just going to be talking based on my experience. I'm not just going to be talking about based on experiences in the women in my practice or even my parents who, like I said, have been married for 40 years. I'm not talking just from experience. I'm also talking from a point of view that is backed up by research. And so today we're going to be talking about 5 myths that I see very commonly when it comes to marriages. And the reason why this is so important is because our marriage is fundamentally connected to our emotional health and wellness. And in fact, our relationships and the depth and quality of our relationships has been shown to be directly correlated to how long we live. Right? So the quality of our relationships, and of course our marriage is the closest relationship that most of us will ever have. So the quality of our relationship is very closely, it's directly proportional to the quality of our happiness. It's directly proportional to the quality of our success. It's definitely directly proportional to the length of life, how long we live. And there have been many studies that have shown that. In fact, Harvard did the longest study in the 1930s. I think 1938, they started studying humans and individuals and tracing them for generations and generations to actually see what does it take to make someone happy, what does it take to make someone feel fulfilled, and the quality, the depth of their relationships is one of them, probably the most important. And like I said, for many of us, our marriages is going to be that relationship that is the closest one for us, is the most probably the longest one for us. And so the quality of this relationship is super, super important. So let's get into the myths. So we're going to be talking about 5 myths. 5 myths that people really believe that this is what it takes to have a healthy marriage. And the first one is that for a marriage to be healthy, it has to be void of conflict. So any marriage where there's conflict automatically means that it is an unhealthy marriage. And so you'll find people who really go out of their way to avoid any conflict, to avoid any confrontation, for the sake of keeping the peace, because they feel like, well, once we start arguing, or once we start fighting, or once we start disagreeing, it means that our marriage is no longer viable or there's a problem. And I want to debunk that myth because, like I said, I just spent a few hours with my parents, and, we were talking about marriage, relationships, and they were sharing lots of beautiful words of wisdom. And one of the things that they said to me is that we disagree every day. After 40 years of being married, they disagree every day. But one thing they said was that it is not about the fact that we disagree or not. It's the fact that it's surface. And we learn to forgive and we learn to move on very quickly. So the point that I'm trying to make with this particular myth is that a marriage void of conflict, and I would actually argue that if there's no conflict in your marriage, if there's no conflict in your relationship, if there's no disagreement, then one or both of you is being dishonest, one or both of you is being inauthentic, one or both of you is actually stifling your emotions, and you may actually have the belief that in order to be successful at this, I need to be really good at hiding my emotions or concealing my emotions. But I'm here to tell you that that is a very big myth. It's a very dangerous myth. And the reason why it's dangerous is because it can lead to resentment down the line. And so when we talk about emotional harm, pretending like everything is okay, or I received a comment on one of my older posts that said that this person was saying that she tends to just apologize and move on if there's a conflict, just to keep the peace, or for whatever reason, I just say sorry so that we can move on. The problem is that you might say sorry, but a seed of resentment has just been sown, and that's going to eventually yield fruits down the line. So I always say that if there's a conflict, if there's a disagreement, there are actual evidence-based tools that we can use to come together and discuss these disagreements in a way where we can arrive at a resolution instead of just swallowing it, suppressing it, saying I'm sorry, and then moving on. So conflict is a very healthy part of relationships. It's a very healthy part of relationships. And I've said this before, that a disagreement actually poses a very beautiful opportunity to strengthen the relationship, because at the end of the day, it's not about whether or not you fight or disagree. It's about how you fight and disagree. It's about your body language. It's about the things that you say. It's about the things that you choose not to say. It's about maintaining eye contact. It's about how invested you are in the relationship and in resolving whatever conflict that you might have. So once again, fighting, conflicts, disagreements, if you don't want to take it from me, take it from my parents, who have, after 40 years, say that they disagree about things every day, and they're still very happy, the best of friends. They still do things together, have fun together. So at the end of the day, it's not about whether you disagree or not. It's about how you fight and how you disagree. Amazing. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. And thanks, Dr. Neka, for putting in the summary. So yes, number one, the myth is I'm healthy marriage has no conflict, whereas the truth of the matter is that the healthy marriage is not about whether you have conflict or not. It's about how you manage the conflict. It's about how you fight. Yes, Benny. Maintaining eye contact, because if you're trying to resolve a disagreement and one person is on their phone or they are distracted watching TV, it's not going to work out. It's not going to work out. There has to be that face-to-face body language. I'm looking at you, I'm listening to what you're saying. And like I said, there are strategies, there are techniques, even how we formulate what we're saying, the words that we choose to use in talking about these conflicts is very, very important. Okay, so let's go on to myth number 2. This was one that as women we find happen. Hi, Angela. Okay. Do you want to lie down? You okay? Okay, go lie down. Just 1 second, guys. Go lie down. I'm coming, okay? Do you want to meet Daddy?
Where is he?
I got so passionate, I woke up one of my kids. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so myth number 2. So thank you everyone for joining. I got so loud and so passionate that I woke up one of my babies, but her dad has come to get her, which is awesome. So sorry about the break in transmission. We just concluded talking about the first myth, which is that healthy marriages do not have any conflict, which, like I said, isn't true. It's not about whether or not you have conflict. It's not about whether or not you fight. It's about how you fight. What is your body language? What are the words that you choose to say? What are the words that you choose not to say? Okay, so we're moving on to myth number 2. Myth number 2 is one that I had to learn very early on. So myth number 2 is that your marriage is meant and designed to make you happy. How many of us who are married believed that? And how many of us who are yet to be married currently believe that? So I don't want you to hear what I'm not saying. I don't want you to hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that you will be unhappy or you should be unhappy in your marriage. That is not what I'm saying. Of course, we want to be happy. Of course, we want to be joyful. Of course, we want to have peace. Of course, we want to make beautiful memories. That is part of what marriage does. But many people look at marriage as the solution to their unhappiness or as the solution to their dissatisfaction, or as the solution to why they feel like something is missing. And I always have to remind, especially the women in my practice who come to me saying, I just need to get married. Once I get married, everything will be okay. That's the only thing that's missing for me is getting married and being in a relationship. That's the only thing that's missing for me. And as soon as I get that, then my life will be complete. And I have to remind them that that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. I personally believe that marriage is an amplifier. And what I mean by that is that, yes, there will be memories, and yes, there will be things that you do together and you want to have fun and bond and have that partnership and build together. But what marriage also does is it amplifies your faults. Yes, it amplifies your faults. It amplifies your weaknesses. So if you are already an impatient person, wait until you get married and let's watch that impatience multiply. If you're already someone who is, for example, who is very frugal, let's use that, who's very frugal. I was going to use a different word, but someone who's very frugal. At baseline, wait until you get married and watch that frugality amplified, because the way it works is a frugal person typically gets matched with someone who is a spender, and then all of a sudden it's like you're trying to pull your hair out managing one another. So all that to say that many people go into marriages thinking that, oh my gosh, it's going to be this thing like I see in the movies where we're going to go on dates and travel the world, and where we're going to build this beautiful house together and have these beautiful kids and have this perfect life. I'm not saying all of those things are bad things. I'm just saying that if that is the reason why you are looking to get married, it's going to set you up for disappointment. It might also set you up for resentment, like I said before. There might be a lot of unrealistic expectations that then end up being unmet. And then comparison is another thing that creeps in, because you look at everyone around you and you're like, why does everybody seem to have it together? Why does everybody seem to have this marriage thing figured out? Whereas for me, it's not anything that I expected it to be. It's because you went in with the wrong expectations, thinking it's going to be sunshine and rainbows, not realizing that you're signing up for the toughest personal development school known to man. And then you add parenting into that, and it's like personal development 2.0. All that to say is that you need to be aware that whatever challenges you have as a person, whether it is pride, whether it is some of us have a PhD in malice keeping or silent treatment, whether it is workaholism, perfectionism, whatever it is that you're going into your marriage with, just know that what ends up happening is it's like a magnifying glass or a big spotlight that is then put on those things that you need to work on. And many times we're so hyper-focused on what the other person's shortcomings are, and not realizing that in actual fact, this marriage, yes, we're working together, but I also need to work on myself. So those things that are being highlighted, whether it's impatience, whether it is perfectionism, all those things that I mentioned, you name it, being able to understand, okay, this is who I am. I need to work on these faults in order to make this marriage better and stronger. And if you have any questions, please feel free to feel free to put them in the comment section or in the question section. If you put it in the question section, I'm going to leave it anonymous. So I'm not going to mention your name or anything like that. So if you want to put in an anonymous question, don't put it in the comments. Put it in that little bubble that has the question mark inside. Okay? So we're talking about 5 marriage myths. And the reason is that I see a lot of women who come to me and they're talking about their marriages. And that's why we're talking about marriage today. So that's the second thing. So the misconception that your marriage is supposed to make you happy, your spouse is supposed to make you happy. The truth of the matter is that it's not. Yes, you're going to be happy. Yes, you're going to enjoy the journey. Yes, you're going to build all those beautiful memories, but understand that there is going to be a lot of growth, introspection, self-awareness, and just your own personal development that needs to happen as well too. I remember at my wedding, one thing the pastor said was that you're getting your marriage license, but just understand that all this means is that you have been admitted into the school of marriage. You're just getting started. This is not a graduation certificate. It's an admission certificate, and you're literally just getting started. And that was a very good perspective that he offered us. Okay, so the third thing, and one that I hear commonly, is this notion that if someone really loves me, if my spouse really loved me, then they would know that I was sad, or then they would know that I wanted a gift like this for my birthday. Or if they really loved me, then they would know that I needed a hug in that moment. If they really loved me, then they would do this, or they would do that, or they would do this, and they would do that. And this is something that really always used to surprise me when people would say it, because I guess just growing up, we just don't make assumptions. We just say what we want and ask for what we want. The truth of the matter is someone can really, really love you, but still not be able to read your mind. Okay? They can love you. They can know you to inside out. They can be your best friend, but still not able to read your mind. One of the mistakes that I made as a newlywed, I probably learned this lesson maybe 5 years into my marriage, is that my husband is not the same as my girlfriends. Okay? He is a very different person. So my husband is very logical. He's very analytical. He's not the emotional type. He's not the intuitive type. There are some people who will see you and they'll be able to tell that you're not really yourself today. Actually, let me give my husband credit. No, he can tell. He can tell. But there's some things that you need to spell out for him. Whereas I might have friends where as soon as I pick up the phone, I may not even say anything and they know exactly what's going on. And so I guess I had that expectation that, okay, well, you're my husband now, you're my best friend, you should be able to pick things up the same way as XYZ, my girlfriend is able to do. But the truth of the matter is they are completely different people, right? And so it's a bit unrealistic for me to have expected that he would be my gisting partner. He will be the one that I would talk to about shopping. He'll be the one that I talk to about everything, right? And the truth of the matter is that, yes, communication is important, but we also have to know, we also have to understand who it is that we're dealing with. First of all, that they cannot read our minds. Second of all, that we have to speak up about the things that we want, the things that we desire, the changes that we need to see. And again, there's nothing wrong with asking for what you want for your birthday, for example. There's nothing wrong with asking for what you want for Valentine's Day, for Christmas, for example. I find some people will kind of be cryptic, or they'll play games or drop hints here and there, and then they end up being fully disappointed when the gift that they get isn't exactly what they want. And I'll ask, well, did you ask? Did you tell him? Did you communicate? And they'll say, well, they should have known. And I'm like, well, really? And so at the end of the day, communication is so important. They can love you from here to the moon and still not be able to read your mind. And so don't be shy about communicating, having these conversations. I remember when I first got married, we would have these business meetings, and yeah, we still do, but maybe not as often. I've relaxed a little bit. So they were very business like, what is our goal for the week? What is our plan for the week? Where are we going? What are we doing? What's the plan? And so I've relaxed a little bit now, but having those touch points, those communication moments, even if it's just a few minutes a day or maybe 30 minutes a week, just to check in and ask each other, how are you doing? What's really going on? Because it's so easy to get into a cycle of just habit. And it's important for us to take that time away and say, hey, okay, just checking in. So all that to say, the first myth is that if someone really loves you, they'll know everything about you and they'll be everything to you and they'll be able to read your mind. But no, the truth is that communication and being intentional about your communication, being clear and direct about your communication actually goes a very, very long way. And so that's the third myth. The fourth myth is that this one is that when you meet someone that checks all the boxes, they have their resume and everything looks good on the resume. And I'm not even talking just about, like, sometimes we'll make jokes like, oh, we want someone who is 6'2", who's handsome, who has brown eyes, who works at so company and drives so. So I'm not even talking about those kinds of superficial things. I'm talking about even the more meaningful things that many of us will have, whether it's a written checklist or a mental checklist, and say, okay, this person is respectful, this person is kind, this person is hardworking, this person is comes from a home that I feel like I could fit in, and I'm not going to be treated like a less than person or like like an outsider. And we do kind of that assessment. The truth of the matter is that some people can check those boxes, so beyond the superficial boxes, the more meaningful boxes, and the two of you are still not compatible. So they can have all those good qualities about them, and on paper everything looks good, and the two of you are still not compatible. So the myth is that people think that, oh, all I need to do is take a look at these check boxes, and as long as everything looks good, then we're good to go. But the truth is that we all come into relationships with a set pattern of behaviors, with preconceived notions, with experiences that have formed how we see ourselves, experiences that have formed how we see other people, with experiences of how we that have formed how we see marriage, right? So even though values might align, there's often things that are way beneath the surface, way behind the curtain, way behind the scenes, that might not be visible right at the beginning and cause problems later. And so someone might check all the boxes, but I will offer that one of the most important boxes that someone should check is to be teachable, meaning that they don't think they know all the answers, meaning that they realize that they are not perfect and they are willing to educate themselves, willing to do the work required to get them from where they are to where they need to be in the marriage. Because if they check all the boxes and, the marriage happens, the wedding happens, and then changes happen just as, we expect in marriage, and the person is like, no, everything's good. We're fine. I'm fine. We're perfect. Everything's good. And they are not willing to assess and say, you know what? Things aren't really where we want them to be. How can we make this better? How can we work together to solve the problem? I always find it interesting where people are willing to do self-improvement, personal development for their careers, or they might be willing in their businesses, they're willing to hire a consultant to come into the business and say, okay, there are inefficiencies here. This is where you're losing money. This is why your staff are leaving. This is why your staff are fighting. And they're willing to pay consultants to come into their business. But when it comes to marriage, we seem to think that we know it all. We seem to think that instinctively we know it all. Or you'll find people who will read all the parenting textbooks or take all the parenting courses. But when it comes to their marriage, their relationship, they're like, oh, no, we've got it. Everything's good. Everything's fine. We're okay. So someone might check all the boxes, but I will offer that it's important to know whether this person is willing to take the necessary steps, read the books, take the courses, see a professional if necessary, if things come to a point where you need that external help, that they won't have, many people have the mindset of, Why do I need to talk to someone about my problems? And this is something very common, especially in the Black community. Why do I need to speak to someone about my problems? They have problems too. How can they help me? Or they're strangers. Strangers shouldn't know what's going on inside of our home. Again, if we look at it from a practical point of view, there are evidence-based scientific tools and resources that are available to you to help navigate these inevitable challenges that are going to come with marriage. So just sitting down and hoping things just magically get better is not a good approach. Going back to the myth, someone might check all the boxes, but please also make sure that this person is whoever it is that you are getting married to. And of course, if you're someone who has been stuck in your ways, this is your wake-up call to say, hey, maybe it's time to actually look into bringing in a professional or looking into some resources to help me navigate, whatever challenges that you're experiencing in your marriage. And if you're with someone who is stuck in their ways or who just isn't open, then really, I will be honest, there's only so much you can do. At best, you can work on yourself. And then just hope that as they see the changes happening in you, one day they'll say, hey, let's do this together. Many times I'll encourage my clients, I don't see couples, but if I feel like, we've gotten to the point where you and I have done enough work together, now it's time to see someone as a couple, I'll say just get your partner into the room, get your husband into the room, get your wife into the room. Realistically, I'm saying get your husband into the room because I see women. And so they are, and so these women who are having challenges with their husbands and saying he's not doing this, he's not doing that, that's the population I see. And so I'll say just get him into the room with someone who I vetted and someone who will help and just see how it goes. And sometimes they'll go to one session and the guy will say, oh, I'm not doing this ever again. And sometimes they'll go to two, they'll go to three, they'll go to four, they'll learn the skills, and then they take what they learn and make things a little bit better. All right. So that is the fourth myth. So we talked about myth number one, the myth that you need to avoid conflict to keep the peace, and that good marriages don't have conflict. Myth number two, your spouse is supposed to make you happy, and we already debunked that myth. Myth number three, that if they really loved you, they would know all the things about you and be everything to you. We debunked that and talked about communication. Myth number four, that when they check all the boxes, that they will make an excellent partner. We debunked that because that just isn't true. You can look good on paper, but still have a lot of baggage that needs to be worked through. So you need to be willing to work through those challenges, okay? And then finally, the final myth that I hear commonly is that marriage is going to change this person for the better, okay? That once we're married, everything is going to be good. There will be peace. There'll be more kindness. There will be more love. There'll be more romance. And I'm always like, how? Like I said, marriage is an amplifier. Whatever was there before just gets magnified once people marry. The truth is that people do change. People do change in marriage. They do change, but usually not in the way that we think they will change. Most people go in ignoring the red flags. I see a lot of divorced women in my practice. And when we talk about what things were like before divorce and before marriage, all of them say, yeah, I noticed the red flags. Looking back, I saw the red flags, but I thought he would change. Or looking back, yes, people told me to be careful, but I thought I had it. I thought he would change. And so many times we see these red flags. Many times we think that, we can pray the red flags away, or that we can, once we're married, then we can work on the flaws. But it never ends up that way. People do change, But first of all, they have to decide to change for themselves. Otherwise, they're really just pretending, and they can pretend for a year, 2 years, 3 years. But after a while, their true nature comes out. Okay. And they can also change, and people can also change. So for example, when I got married, I was an emergency room doctor. I'm no longer an emergency room doctor. And so things change. People change. People become more gentle. People can become more gentle. People can become more savvy, whether it's financially savvy. People can become more conscious about their health. People can change. People can change in beautiful ways as they become parents. For many of us, becoming parents changes a lot about how we see the world. So can people change? Yes, absolutely people can change. But there is no way for you to be able to predict how somebody is going to change. Absolutely no way. And there's no way for you to be able to guarantee that the changes that you're hoping for are going to happen just because you get married. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And so you have to be willing to accept, if you decide to commit to this person, accept that I saw the red flags, but here we are. Nothing has changed, and here we are. Okay, people can change. I'm not saying that whoever it is that you're with at the beginning is who you're going to be with 10 years. No, people change, people evolve, absolutely. But you can't guarantee what that change is going to look like. And so at the end of the day, you have to realize that what you see is probably what you're going to be getting for a very long time. And you have to be willing to move with the ebbs and flows of and you're going to change. You're going to change. Your preferences are going to change. Maybe your style of dressing is going to change. The kinds of foods that you might like, the kind of music you might enjoy might change. But at the end of the day, we need to understand that, yes, these changes are happening. We can't really predict them. But whoever we choose to partner with, it's that commitment to that person that is part of what will carry us, through those ebbs and flows, through those changes that come and go. All right. Okay, so, thanks, Angie. Angie's talking about my cheekbones. I get it from my daddy. Thank you. And thanks, Dr. Neka, for putting in the summaries in the chat. I appreciate that. Toby says, Rizam. I don't know what you were referring to, but thank you. All right, so just to quickly summarize, I know that there's a question in the chat, so I will get to the question. Today, we busted 5 common myths about marriage. We talked a little bit about the harm that they cause, whether it's resentment, whether it's disappointment, comparison, whether it is contempt, meaning that you start looking at your spouse in a way that is like you just don't like them, you're annoyed by them, everything they do kind of irritates you, whether it is a distancing that happens, or even just heartache, sadness, loneliness is another emotional harm that comes from all these myths that we have about marriage that actually aren't true. So the sooner we're able to be realistic about what marriage is, that all marriages will have conflict, even the best marriages will have conflict. And I also have the position that conflict, when done right, can actually strengthen a marriage. The second thing we talked about was your spouse isn't necessarily going to be the source of your happiness, right? And you need to be able to communicate your happiness, understand that you need to be able to communicate your needs and understand that marriage is going to test you in ways like never before. And those tests are never going to feel fun. They're never going to feel comfortable. We talked about how your spouse cannot read your mind and how communication skills are critically important when it comes to making marriage work. We talked about someone can check all the boxes, but because we all come with preconceived notions, we all come with baggage, they need to be able to be teachable as well in order to do any unlearning that's required and relearning that's required to make the marriage work. So all those checklists that we have, Yes, they're great and yes, they're good. It's good to know what you want. But if someone is stuck in their ways, set in their ways, it's going to be very, very challenging where if they don't see the need to learn. So they need to be teachable. And finally, people will change when we get married, but we cannot predict the type of change we're going to get. And so hoping that you're gonna settle with someone who the red flags are there, but you're like, let's just have the wedding, and after the wedding we'll figure it out. It's not a very wise strategy. It's not a very wise strategy. Okay, so let's go into the questions. So this question says, let me just see. My partner will never talk to any member of the opposite sex ever again. Okay, so you're talking about the concept that your partner will never talk to any member of the opposite sex ever again. When is jealousy no longer a signal emotion, but a toxic one? This is a very good question. Jealousy is not a good emotion. It's not a good, when we look at jealousy if we're talking about emotions, and we look at jealousy on the breakdown of the fundamental emotions, we have 7 fundamental emotions: sadness, happiness, anger, fear, surprise, disgust, and I'm missing one, but we have 7. Sadness, so surprise and happiness generally tend to be more of the positive emotions. Anger, fear, sadness, all those other ones are not so positive emotions. And because the situation, whatever circumstance we find ourselves in, will stir up thoughts, and those thoughts will stir up emotions. And those emotions will then lead to actions, right? So our emotions lead to actions. Actions come from the things that we tell ourselves and how we feel about the things we tell ourselves. And so jealousy typically tends to lead to actions that are counterproductive. I don't know anyone who has the emotion of jealousy and actually doing something positive with it, because jealousy is not on the spectrum of positive emotions. Right? Someone might be protective, which then might lead to certain steps that you take in order to protect the person that you love. But the interesting thing is sometimes the action can look the same, but the emotion driving it can look very different. So jealousy is never really a good emotion. If someone is jealous, it means that they're threatened. It means that they're fearful about this other interaction. So jealousy can happen between, romantic partners. It can even happen between friendships. It can happen between siblings. So usually it's the threat of a third party coming in to disrupt whatever relationship that person thinks they have with someone else. So 2 people have a relationship, whether it's a pre-established friendship or they're now romantically involved, and then there's a third party that is fueling the jealousy in somebody because that person feels threatened by the other person. And whenever we feel threatened, we either go into a fight response, meaning we get aggressive, whether it's with our words. This is when we start saying catty things, passive aggressive things, or we start saying things that aren't, really nice, or doing things like giving silent treatment, or, just things like that. It could be flight, which might look like withdrawing from the conversation. So say, for example, you find out that the opposite sex is talking to your spouse or partner, and then you start to withdraw, or you start to give silent treatment, or you start to give the cold shoulder, right? So whenever there's a threat that leads to jealousy, or the perception of a threat to the relationship that leads to jealousy, the outcome is never really positive or productive. So if it's jealousy, then it's not healthy. Someone might be protective, meaning, I see something that you don't see, like the way that he is coming up on you, the way that he is calling you at odd times of the night, or the way that there's just something about his body language towards you that is making me uncomfortable, and I'm worried about you. So yeah, let's talk about that. So the energy behind that, the emotion behind that isn't jealousy. It's more of protectiveness or worry or concern. Okay. I don't know if that answers the question, and anyone can feel free to chip into that. So the question once again was, my partner will never talk to any member of the opposite sex ever again. When is jealousy no longer a signal emotion, but a toxic one? I hope I answered that question. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Are there any other questions? If you joined partway, please be sure to watch the replay. Please be sure to share. And ultimately, I want to just encourage you to say that marriage, it's just one of those things that takes work, you know. Another thing that people think is a marriage is supposed to be easy, it's supposed to be light and whatever. The truth of the matter is it's a relationship. It takes work. I will say that another myth that people have is that marriage is a struggle. I don't also believe that. I don't believe that it should be like a struggle. There's a line between where it's a struggle, where it feels like it's hard and you're suffering in the marriage, versus where, okay, this is hard, this is tough, this is a challenge, but I've got this. So there's a line. I'm not saying that so it does take work, but you shouldn't be suffering in the marriage, okay? There are tools, there are resources, there are, things that you can look up online, there are courses, there are professionals, there's so many things that you can do to make sure that you are well in love instead of crazy in love. I think the last session is how to go from crazy in love to well in love. So we know Beyonce sang Crazy in Love. Okay, yes, it's a tune and all of that. But we don't want to be crazy in love. We want to be well in love. We want to be happy. We want to be thriving in love. And so there are tools available. There are resources available. My husband and I have been planning on putting something together. We'll see how it goes. But depending on the response, we might put something together just to share our experiences and resources, and just from a professional point of view, not just from a opinion point of view, things that are actually proven scientifically to work. Okay. All right, Eniola says, thank you so much, Dr. Yewande. Insightful as always. Marriage is the most challenging self-development course ever. Absolutely. And if you go into it with that mindset, that, this is school. This is school. I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn about myself. I'm here to learn about my background. I'm here to learn about experiences that I may have forgotten that have shaped me and how I see the world and how I see relationships, how I see marriage. If you see it that way, as that kind of life learning experiences, it makes a world of a difference. You've never arrived in marriage, and that's why I'm not here as like, hey, look at me, I've gotten it right for 10 years. I'm coming from a professional point of view. Yes, there's the experience, there's the observation, but also from a professional point of view, the things that have been proven to work. It's always an ongoing process. Toby says, I agree. As much as marriage requires intentional work from both parties, it should not be like one is being enslaved. Absolutely. Be intentional. And he says, thank you, DY. Yes, me too. I can't wait. Let's see if he agrees, but something is in the works. We'll take it one step at a time. Part of me thinks, okay, maybe I should just do something with women. And then maybe later on we can do something together with the men, but we're working on something. I think it's something that's needed, just because, like I say, I see it a lot, and I hear a lot of stories. And this has been highly requested. So obviously there's a need. There's a need. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, let me see. What are we talking about next week? Let me just check my notes. Next week, same time, same place, we are going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about why marriages end. Why marriages end. So next week, July 15th at 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be unpacking irreconcilable differences. You know how when people get divorced and they cite irreconcilable differences, we're going to be unpacking irreconcilable difference from a cognitive point of view, so like a psychological point of view, and a behavioral point of view. So not just, again, this is not opinion, this is not church, this is not, this is not what they premarital counseling or premarital, whatever. This is from a psychological, cognitive point of view, unpacking those irreconcilable differences. All right. I'm not knocking church. You guys know I love church. But I think that many of us are looking for something more practical. Many of us are looking for something more, tools, real tools. We've heard many of the sermons and many of the, I don't want to call them dogmas because that's not what I really mean, but we've heard those things. Oh, don't let a third party into your marriage. Oh, I don't know, all those things that we hear, but I feel like people want something more tangible, something more practical, tools, resources. And so that's a big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. All right, so stay tuned. See you next week. And have a wonderful rest of it. Don't forget to share because the more we are together, the happier we shall be. The more we are happy in our relationships, the better the world will be. That's what I meant to say. And the longer we will live. Studies have shown that strong relationships lead to longevity. So a big reason why I do what I do. All right, everybody. Talk to you next week. Bye.